am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Corliss Taylor, the Vice President and Charitable Development Officer for Raymond James Trust, a subsidiary of Raymond James Financial. Corliss's passion is raising awareness about how to do strategic charitable planning through education and marketing. She is also the appointed national co-chair of the Women's Inclusion Network for Raymond James Financial, working tirelessly to incorporate diversity and inclusion into the corporate conversation. Corliss is a native of Atlanta, Georgia. She received her bachelor's degree from Brown University and holds a master's in business administration and Juris Doctorate degree. She's also earned her certified trust and financial advisor designation from the American Bankers Association. She lives in Tampa, Florida, and enjoys running, reading, and the popular game show Jeopardy! During my interview with Corliss, she shares teachings from her parents that has served her in exploring her own passion in the work she does and paying it forward. Her tips on how to shift the conversation on inclusion and make an impact are not to be missed during this episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs. I'm very excited today to have Corliss Taylor from Raymond James. And Corliss, did you want to go ahead and just give a brief introduction of who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy, so much for having me on the program. I'm Corliss Taylor, as Amy said, and I work for Raymond James Trust. I'm the Vice President and Charitable Development Officer for our trust company, and that means that I talk all things charitable planning along with trust and estate planning with our financial advisors across our footprint. And I get to talk about strategies and solutions and really implement that with the in-state clients. So it's an awesome opportunity. I'm also the national co-chair for our Women's Inclusion Network, which focuses on diversity, inclusion, and how we can make sure that we're treating everyone equally and being very inclusive across the company.
Yeah, such an important topic, and especially now. And, you know, that was one thing I was just talking about with a group of friends, that everything that's come out recently with the issues with George Floyd and so forth, it's the good, the positive has been this discussion really being elevated in corporate environments and more awareness and actually talking to people about their stories. Have you noticed that yourself, being in charge of that?
Absolutely. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our firm took a stand that I was so proud of. They sent out an email. They sent out a pledge where all of the executive members, our Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Council, board members signed this pledge to start the conversation. It's not an easy one to have, especially for a corporate firm to enter into, but they wanted to start the conversation and then take actionable steps to make a difference. I thought that was exemplary, so I was very excited about that. So yes, the firm is talking about it. And then I have colleagues across the industry talking about it. The conversation has definitely started.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you on today and really talk about your story, because, you know, you're definitely a trailblazer to have worked in a traditional firm like you are and have the impact that you are. So I'd love to talk about your beginnings. Where did you grow up? What was your family? What did your parents do? That sort. Give us a little background on yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for asking. I am, they call me the little girl from the South. I was born and raised in Atlanta. And this is before it became hot Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yes, that was many, many years ago. And I was raised there with my family. My mom's side, my dad's side are there. And I live in Florida, but 98% of my family is still in Atlanta. So we were a very close-knit family. And I have one sister, so it's just us and my cousins growing up. And we did so many fun things. My mom was adamant that we get out and we get exposure because we were all just there in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. My mom is a computer professional. So back in the day, she was raising us. She was a teacher. She taught school, and then she morphed into teaching about computers. She's a specialist in computers. And then my dad owned his own business since I was a baby. And he loved to tinker with his hands. He's since deceased, but he's left this great entrepreneurial spirit in us to go out, figure it out, tinker until you find out what the answer is. So that's what I grew up seeing. Someone teaching me something, and then my dad telling me how to implement what my mom is teaching me.
Exactly. Now just go do it, screw up, and then learn how to do it right. Yeah, exactly. What kind of business did he have?
He had a barbershop and beauty salon combo back before I think it was popular. Wow. We used to just go in and be happy to be there. So he was, of course, a barber, but he owned several barber shops. He owned about four barber shops before he passed. And then he had two of them with a beauty salon. So my sister and I would go hang out there because we thought it was fun. And then he would teach us how to run a business, how to fix things in the business, anything he could find his hands to do, because he said, you have to be self-sufficient as a business owner. I just remember that. Mm-hmm. And that has translated into corporate America with me. My friends, you have to be able to fix issues. So
yes, you have to be able to go, I call it go fish. Right? Like someone's not always there to answer the question for you. You have to be able to figure out how you go find alternative answers.
So true. You have to be resourceful. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, it's funny when you talk about like that time period of salons. I remember going with my mom, and the reason I looked forward to it was they have the Dr. Pepper bottles. And they had the bottle opener there, and I felt Dr. Pepper tasted totally different when I was at the salon. That's all I look for. That's what I think about going to the salon at that age. Like,
it's so funny you should say that because I'm from Atlanta, home of Coca-Cola.
Okay.
And so when we would go to the salon, because we're just young and we're happy to be there, we're just kids, so we would get into things. And so my mom would say, if you're good today, I will give you a Coca-Cola and your favorite, this little lollipop, the bubble, whatever it was called, Coca-Cola and a lollipop. If you're good. If you're not good, you don't get one. So that, to me, Coca-Cola is a reward.
Exactly. So now, knowing the field you're in, why did you decide to not go in the beauty salon area or be a computer engineer?
I love that question. Thank you. Sometimes, periodically, at least I'd say 4 times a year, I tell my mother, thank you, Mom. My mother was the type of mother that it was very domineering. And if you thought something else, she'll tell you exactly why it was wrong and why you should do this. And her thought was, I was her adventurous child. So I needed to go out and broaden my perspective and my horizons. And she wanted me to go away to school. I had already picked out my undergrad. I knew what I was going to do. And she said, no, you're going to Brown University and you're going to get a better education and you're going to go out and conquer the world. You've always wanted to do it since you were a little girl, and that's what you're going to do. So that is the reason I did not try to take over my dad's business, or I didn't even go into teaching, because she said, go expand. And when I got to in my college years, I realized I love numbers. I love people. And here I am. And I tell her, I was like, you made me do it, but I'm so thankful you did.
So that must have been really scary. Like, going from something where you felt safe and your mom's kind of going, here, like, go out in the wild, figure it out. So what was your process to even figure out that you like numbers or get comfortable with being on your own and going away from, what you knew?
When I left home, we'd gone on vacation, but I had my family there. It was such an undertaking. My mother was there, my sister was there, my dad had passed, but my mom said to me, "You are here. You will make it. Now you figure it out. I'm here for anything you need, but I know you." And I'm like, well, and then I was like, she's right. I love her. Because she could encourage me. We may not be here, but she would always say, "I'm just a plane away. I'm just one plane ride away." And I felt that comfort. So I never really felt alone. I did have to figure out quite a bit because, again, I'm the little girl from the South, and I went to Providence, Rhode Island, didn't know anything about that. Culture change, culture shock. But she encouraged me to figure it out. It was difficult at first, but then I found my way slowly but surely, and I am ever grateful to them for what they allowed me to learn and do.
And it is such a hard thing as a parent. Like I know last year when I pushed my son as well to, I had been a commuter in college and I was like, you need to kind of see what the college experience is, but I would cry when he was leaving. I'm like, I'm not crying. Like, I'm excited for you, but I'm still sad. Like, it's still hard, but I know it's the right thing. So it's like, you like, as a parent, go back and forth. So
Funny.
With being in so I would say probably diversity was completely different in Rhode Island than you were used to and so forth. So did you see that, or did it confront you in any way? Or was it like you had so much confidence built in from growing up with your family that you were able to push past it? Like, tell me what that experience was like.
It was a shock at first. It's not as diverse as we would like to see it. Absolutely not. Understood, because it's very difficult to get in and stay in and maintain a good grade point average. So kudos to the school for the amount of diversity they do have, and they're focused on it. It was a shock for me. And so I spent my initial days there figuring things out for me to be successful. Because one thing I knew, I'd seen this growing up, and one thing I knew for sure is when I would look around and realize where I am and how grateful I was to be there, I had to help somebody else. So what I figured out was you have to be the best version of you. I figured that out after a while. And I said, once I'm the best version of me, then I can reach back. When I got to that turning point, I'd say about the middle of my sophomore year, the end of the first semester, beginning of the second, then I started reaching out for that diversity edge, because now I'm at the point where I want to help someone else. So I started looking for it, and it was there, but I had to really be cognizant of where the diversity was located, and then be intentional about expanding it. We had so many groups and organizations and African American this, Asian this, and Latino. We had them there, but we wanted to expand it. So it was work. You had to get into organizations. I actually joined a sorority so that I could do more service. And the university recognized that. And so we were able to do things at the university in some of the halls and really provide that diverse cultural, the diaspora that we were trying to provide. So, and we did that. And once I graduated, I never stopped. And when I look at where I am now, I'm like, I've been doing this my entire career.
Without even meaning to. It's an internal passion.
Without even meaning to.
Yeah.
You show up, and if you have my opinion is, my motto is help someone. And if you have the intention to help, when you show up on the scene, you're looking for service. How can I do something for someone? What is the issue that I can resolve? And that's where I found myself in my first job, and since then where I am now. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity just to even be sitting here still having this conversation.
So I find this an interesting conversation, because there's people that's natural to them, right? Like How can I help? And so you start noticing that and take it into your corporate world, and little by little you start noticing it's a repetition in your life. You might have not noticed it right away. But for people that it doesn't come naturally to ask that question.
Right.
What would you suggest to them? Because, I think many people are in their own experience, and it can be very hard to look outside of yourself, your own experience, like what you're describing. That I think when you talk about diversity and inclusion, is, do I see me, right? Like, so if I want to go work at Raymond James, if I don't see myself or someone like me, like I may not apply. And you were demonstrating with what you did was like outreach and how can I help other people get these opportunities and be able. But if that doesn't come naturally to me, because I just don't see it that way, what would you suggest to people that they could do so that they can start understanding kind of outside perspectives and being able to shift themselves?
If they don't see themselves in the room, if they don't see anyone that looks like them, if they are in the room, it is incumbent upon them to bring more people in the room. That's what I cannot tell you, Amy, how many times I've been the only one in the room. Mm-hmm. And when I notice that, now I know what my service is. The next time I show up to this room or before I leave this room, how can I get someone else like me here? It's because it's not all about me. It's about expanding the diversity, the inclusion, the equality, and even the fitness of that organization, because I believe diversity of thought, diversity of people, diversity of ideas, it all works together for the bottom line.
Right.
So if you don't see anyone in the room and you're there, you have to bring someone. If you're not comfortable doing that, the issue now has become educating yourself, getting the right mentor or the right session, the right class, the right degree, the right partner to show you how to be fearless in environments like this. Because that's what it takes to have difficult conversations. You have to be prepared and you have to be fearless. You have to know if this cause is worth fighting for. I have to educate myself on both sides of the argument, not just the one that I'm the proponent of, and then be able to go in with that education and have the conversation with the people that can actually make a difference. All of that takes work and it takes effort on your part if you feel as though you're not ready to go in and bring more people like you.
Yeah, I love that. And it really works to the discussion of mindfulness, right? That outside awareness of yourself. Because I would also flip it to say, if I'm in the room and everyone looks like me, what do I do? And I think it's the same answer, probably, that I need to educate myself. I need to have the hard discussion with everyone in the room of why do we all look alike in here?
That is a profound point. Now, because of what I do, and I'm very grateful for my role, but I take this seriously. I have gotten more calls from senior leaders, executive leaders, people reaching out saying, what can I do? Because to your question, what if everybody looks like me, what can I do? They wanted to know that, and they were asking in earnest. And my response to them was, your call means a lot. I appreciate it, but you have identified a serious issue that only you can fix, because no one else in that room called me. I don't look like you. You called me because you said no one in the room looked like Corliss, and you wanted to know how can you get some people in the room that look like me. Now it's your issue. What are you going to do to fix it? I believe, and Amy, I love to read. I digress here. I am just like an avid reader. And I will roll off a list of books because I think you can educate yourself very quickly in a book. You can read it at your own pace. You can digest it. So I roll off books For instance, in
Yeah.
this
Give
environment,
some examples.
how to be an anti-racist, white fragility, the warmth of other suns. Read those books. See what we've experienced. See what you're experiencing, and how can we come together in unity?
Mm-hmm.
We need to be educated on both sides of this issue, both sides, and figure out a harmonious way to continue to coexist where no one is disadvantaged. And that's a tall order. This is years of the same situation repeating itself. And so I tell my friends, if no one looks like me, then what are you going to do? And I give them the books. I give them some information and some game changers I think they can implement, and then I follow up.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point that it's not a quick fix, right? Like this is a marathon. and it's one thing at a time. Because I think sometimes an issue can get so overwhelming that people get overwhelmed by the issue and then stagnate because it could be too much. So I love the first step of, here's a list of books you can start with. Just take some personal education and read some books. What you said, you have some other little game changers. What are those?
So this is my personal favorite.
Okay.
Bring me to the meeting. Don't just ask me an email. Can I come to the meeting too? And I say that not because I believe I have all the answers, but what I do believe is if you're serious, bring me or someone else that would fit. If we're talking a tech company, you may not want to bring me because I do trust in estate planning. But if you're okay, I'm okay with it. I'm to my point about being fearless. Bring me in the room. If I don't know the answer, I'll find the answer. But if you know someone else that looks like me that you think would be qualified to be in that room, bring them to the meeting. That way you've done two things.
Yeah, and when you bring someone to the meeting, it doesn't mean you have to contribute. You can shadow. So
that's
it's really
exactly what I was about to say.
Right. It's
exactly
observing
right.
the conversation.
You're exactly right. Two things are accomplished. One, that meeting no longer is a meeting that everybody looks the same. One thing accomplished. Second point is you don't have to have that person say something to the CEO to change the company's bottom line. Allow that person to be educated in your space because they're learning as well. And if you allow them to say something, you can learn also. It's a win-win. In my opinion, that's one of the tricks I'll implement quickly because it's easy to do. There are qualified candidates of diverse backgrounds available. We just have to look for them.
Yeah. Well, and also when you shadow a conversation, and this is really, you can practice active listening this way, but if someone's sitting in the room that's not normally in the room, there might be things that they can take notes on in their observation of, you know what? This is where conversation would have gotten uncomfortable for someone that wasn't the same as everybody else and would have struggled to speak up. And the one thing about feedback that I think is really important if you ask someone to give feedback is that you're very specific about the feedback you want. So if I invite you, Corliss, to my next meeting to say, I'd like to get your observation of the meeting, what we talked about, how it made you feel, I need to be very specific. Like, what conversations made you uncomfortable? What areas would we need to change how we operate to be more inclusive? Like where it's not just a free-for-all, because sometimes a free-for-all might create like opinion versus very specific actionable items that someone can work on.
Mm-hmm. You have a prolific and very profound point there, because what happens is, and I tell this to my family, people that look like me.
Yes.
We're not the only, everyone else is not the only audience that needs to be educated, because we are feeling this, we need to understand what are the obstacles, what are the roadblocks. So have an agenda, because I could go from childhood. You asked me about where did I grow up? I could go all the way back to when I was a little girl, what happened to me. We're not talking about that now. That's not the issue on the table. I don't want to know about that when you were 12. That's great. Hope your story was okay. But we're talking about concrete, actionable items we can do right now to make a difference with X. And whatever X is, if it's in your company or with your outside education group, whoever it may be, whatever X is, have an agenda. And everybody needs to stick to the agenda, period. And then if we can't get to everything on the agenda, let's meet again. Because see, what I found is, obviously we can see this has been the case, we won't solve this all in one meeting. We won't do it. So if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and put in the work and have that motto, how can I help? How can I serve? That's me, but I think it works. If you have that, then you don't mind putting in the work. You don't mind the effort.
Yeah, and I think if you continue to even pause in the meeting to remind everyone, how can I help? How can I serve? Let's get grounded back into, why we're here. I think that's really important. So, you definitely have, passion around, found this passion in college, which has served you well. When you started off on your career path, I know you noticed you were good with numbers, so you have that awareness of yourself. What really helped you as you were growing in your career?
I did. I started out my career for a brief moment using numbers because I said, I have this degree. It makes sense. You should use numbers. So I was a senior financial analyst doing spreadsheets. And I met a friend. I was doing a leadership class, and we became friends and we were talking. And she said, you're such a people person. Why are you crunching numbers? I laughed about it. And I thought about that. I was like, I do love people. I do love talking to people and interacting. And I did a self-assessment. I know it sounds like cliche-ish now, but back in the day, that wasn't the buzzword. No. And I sat down and I was doing this senior financial analyst position, and someone in the firm told me that they were recruiting over to have people start a unit to do trust and estate planning. And back to my ever-loving mother, she told me, she said, you will go to law school. I was like, no. And then I said, okay, I'll go, I promise. And I never thought about it. Well, when I heard about this trust and estate planning, you really need a legal background. I was like, oh, let me see what that's about, because I remember my mom said I should go to law school, just how all the dots connected. Right. So I actually applied and got the role and went immediately into trust and estate planning. How did I make that jump? I listened. I listened to my friend who gave me feedback on me that I did not see. I didn't know. I knew I loved people. I knew I loved interacting, but I never put that together with my career because my degree was in math. I had a great job. Let's keep moving. And then when the opportunity presented itself, I believe this quote came from Oprah or maybe Nelson Mandela, whoever, I wanted to give them their credit. But when opportunity and preparedness come together, you have success. So that's when the opportunity presented itself with the firm. I was prepared because I knew I should be in this role because I did a self-assessment. My friend said it. And here we go to success. And my career took off. I took that role. I've been in private wealth management, trust and estate planning my entire career. So that's how, listening and acting.
Yes. And I think a lot of times, it's a really important point, because when we get in our own way of taking opportunities many times because we think, oh, we don't have the law degree, we don't have this or that, so we don't apply, which actually is something that harms diversity in a lot of corporate environments, because many women will be like, well, I don't have Y, but I have X and Z, so I'm not going to apply until I have Y. And it is, I think the openness to look for the opportunity and put yourself at risk that you may not be good at something, but you know that you want to try it and there could be learning in that is a really hard thing for people to do, that it doesn't come naturally. And you were fortunate you had your mom's voice in your ear.
Yeah. It's so true.
People don't have that. What would you suggest?
I'm so glad you said that. And again, you're so great at this. That's why you're Amy Vetter.
Oh.
But I feel like this. We had a board member from Raymond James speak to us, Susan Story, and she said women typically do what you're saying. They typically, I can't check the box on every job requirement they want for this particular role, so I won't apply. Typically, you see the women doing that. And she said, and I agree, and I say, it's very rare that anyone will be 100% qualified for any role. Men tend to do this exceedingly well.
Yeah.
They see a role, they think it's interesting, they apply, and they think they're the ones for the job.
Right.
Whether they are coming, if they are a physicist and they want to do artwork and they have no idea about how to paint, they don't care. It seems interesting. I'm going for it. What I tell women specifically and people in general is if you have an interest in this role, something in you told you you could do it. Why would you deny that inner voice that said you could do it? You're not being true to yourself. And we love that mantra, be true to yourself. Be you, bring your whole self to work. Okay, do that. And don't be afraid of no. If you don't get it, okay, ask why you didn't get it. Do what you need to do to better yourself, right, to get the qualifications the next time. And I also say to people who are in authority that you need to also think about people who were bold enough to apply for this role and they knew they didn't have the qualifications. If they're bold enough to do it, they're bold enough to figure out this job. And I tell hiring managers that. I was bold enough to apply to be a heart surgeon, and I've never been to medical school. Well, she's going to figure out how to do something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. It's looking at that, and that drive sometimes is so much more attractive in someone that works for you than someone that can check off all the boxes, but things come easy, right? Because you know they're going to work hard for the opportunity. And I love also about not being afraid of the no, because that's truly how we learn. We have to be okay sometimes with rejection, because in those moments you have to look at, where are my opportunities to get this next time? What learning do I have to do? What experience do I have to do? And again, it kind of comes back to what we were talking about with the right feedback, is if you don't get the role, ask why, so that you know exactly what you need to do to get it the next time, or somewhere else, or whatever that means for you if you're that excited about a new job prospect.
That is absolutely true. It's so true. I think, and I know that it's a real issue for some. I have this mentoring group in the firm, and some of the mentees are introverts, and they really cannot step up. They can't see themselves there. And so what I tell them is, you have to do a vision board. You have to see yourself doing whatever it is that you're afraid of. You got to own it. And so however you get to owning it, let's work through that process. And so we can role play here. I can interview you and help you get ready for it. You can take a Toastmasters class so that you can articulate your thoughts and won't get nervous. Or what I tell people is you have to disarm the audience. If you don't think that you can speak to it, write it down. When you go to the interview, tell the interviewer, I am an introvert. I know I can do this role. So I wrote down what I think I could do and slide the paper over to them.
Yeah.
And if they need any, it's your paper. It's your paper. If they ask questions, you should be able to speak to that, because you're not speaking to their question in general. You're speaking to their question on your paper. And you got to be able to do that. So it's about finding the right technique, I think, to get to the ability to say, I'm the girl for the job. I'm the guy for the job.
Yeah. And I think this goes with our discussion of inclusion personality types, that it's really a two-way street, right? Like that person that it may not come comfortable for could be completely qualified for the job, but just not great in an interview. Also, as a hiring manager, we often, without meaning to, it's unconscious bias of hiring someone just like me, right? Like, so you interview someone, you're excited because you talk in the same language, but sometimes you really need to step back and define that persona. And it might be that someone has a different personality than you. I've interviewed a number of introverts on this podcast that have told their story and what they need in a meeting in order to be successful. They need preparation, they need an agenda. So, if you're a hiring manager, how can you give them an agenda before they show up without surprise questions, so that someone can be prepared? How can you set it up to give them time to think, where they need some silence before they respond right away? Or if you've got a group interview style, making sure that each person has a moment to talk where you're offering the stage to them to talk. And I think, all of these things about inclusion, there's so many different, ways that we have to expand basically the way our operating style is in order to make sure we do have diversity of thought in the room.
That is absolutely true. We cannot use old methods on new issues all the time.
Right.
We can't. We have to adapt, and we have to listen and see what is it that is going to be effective today.
Yeah.
What is it we're going to now? If it happens to be an old method, okay, let's pull it out and dust it off. But if it's not, be willing to be nimble and malleable so that you can get the issue resolved.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. So, you've given so many awesome tips so far that I think will be really actionable for people. How do you feel you've passed this on in your own family to the people that you work with? Because this is really, you've had the benefit of your parents really kind of pushing you. So how do you do it today yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I just believe if you don't help someone else, it's all about passing it on, paying it forward. And so what I do, for me, I love to serve. I really do. I mentor, I teach, and I make myself available. So people, you may not be in one of my groups or my book club, but if I tell people, give my number out. I don't mind. Just tell me who it is, and even if you don't, if they call me and they just say, "Oh, I know," it's fine, because whatever I can share, I want to do that. If it's going to help you, by all means, I will share it. So that's one of the ways I do it. I also, for my family, they're back in Atlanta, and Atlanta is one of the civil rights grounds. I make sure I talk to my family and my younger cousins who are very active. They're very involved, very engaged. I try to tell them what I know, what worked and what did not work. Here are the mistakes I made, because you don't want to leave those out. So if I'm telling my family, or if I'm telling my mentees or someone that calls, here are the mistakes I made. A lot of times we don't want to talk about them. They're not our shining moment. They're not the ones you really want to brag about. But what they do is they help someone else to get to a resolution faster, because they don't have to make the same mistakes you made, or they don't have to trip and stumble and fall and go down a rabbit trail, because you've already done that. So share it, make it available, and don't be afraid to expose yourself. Put yourself out there and say, I'll help Here's how I didn't do so well. Here's how I did do well. And be an example, I think it would really help.
I love that. So to end and conclude, I like to do some rapid fire questions. So you pick a category: family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Money.
Okay.
I'm in financial services.
There you go. Yeah. You'd be remiss. All right.
Yes.
So things or actions I don't have that I want with money.
It can be anything?
Yes.
Okay. I would love to have, if I had the money, I would build a school for girls. And I would educate them on it would be a private school with all the offerings to get them prepared for college. That's what I do.
I love that. All right. So things or actions that I do have that I do want as far as money.
I have a small group at my church where we go back and serve. We give back, so we buy supplies, whether it's school supplies or food. And so I can contribute to that because it's in my budget. And so I put it in the budget, it's a line item, and I can give back and help somebody else in need.
Love that. Okay. So things or actions that I don't have that I don't want as far as money.
That I don't have that I don't want. I don't have the fame and the fortune that goes along with money, and I don't want that. You heard the song, More Money, More Problems?
Yeah.
And people know about it, and they're like, oh, she hit the lottery. She has $20 million, and then all the problems that go. No, I don't want that. I don't have it, and I don't want those problems. So.
More money, more problems.
I want to be able to help people, and people come up and they are better for it, and I walk away and we don't have to talk about it anymore.
Love that. Love that. All right. Things or actions that I do have that I don't want as far as money.
I do have a budget, and I don't want one. I want to be able to do what I want to do, Amy. I want to give, but I do have a budget that I have to stick to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, bummer, but I don't want it.
So with our conversation today, anything you want to make sure that we haven't covered or that is a big takeaway you want people to walk away with from our conversation?
Wow, this has been great. It's been fun, and you're true to form like your other sessions. It's been awesome. Thank you again for the opportunity. I would just want everyone to know, if you know anything about me, Corliss, I love to serve. I love to give back. And and the reward that I get for that is selfish because I am so built up. I'm so energized. I have the energy of a 2-year-old because just to see someone else benefited by whatever little thing I can do makes me happy. So I would say the whole summary of this is give back and see how it does for you.
Yeah, and you're contagious because I feel it. I'm ready to give. I'm ready to serve.
I love it.
Thank you so much for being on today. And you had so many great tips for people to take away. So thank you very much. And now for mindful moments on this interview with Corliss Taylor, which I found so inspiring. And I think there are so many great tips in here to really shift the conversation. I know a lot of times when we talk about diversity and inclusion, it can feel overwhelming. It can feel like there's so much to be done. And so it can paralyze us rather than thinking about the little things that we can do one step at a time to start making an impact. Now, really, I loved her story about her parents and the importance of her mom basically telling her she got this. I think it's really important with the people that we work with, our children, family and friends, that we do have this positive outlook to encourage people to take chances and also look internally at our strengths and know that we always have ourselves to rely on. and a network of people around us in case we fall. Who those people are, it's important to identify. Like her mom said, I'm only a plane ride away. You know, who are those people that are just a plane ride away, a phone call away, that if you're having those bad days or feeling like you're falling through the cracks, who are you going to talk to help pick you back up, that believes in you and knows that you are doing the right thing, even on the days that it's not perfect. And also her findings as she went through school about being intentional about how to expand her network and give back to others, that once she got through the hard stuff, how is she going to help others get through it as well? And that's why I've really titled this, How Can I Help? Because I think this was a major theme with her that throughout her career and life, that maybe she didn't identify it early on, but because of the help that she received, then her way of giving back is asking others, how can I help? It's such a simple question, but it's so important in the work that we do with the people that we're working with our family members, is asking the question, how can I help? We often don't ask that question because maybe we don't have the bandwidth, that if someone told us what we need to do to help, we couldn't do it. But honestly, many of those answers are not huge things that we need to do to help. It's often listening and not solving. It's listening to what someone's story is, what their issues are, letting them get their feelings out, and then maybe coming back later with how you can help to resolve certain issues or other resources or people you know that can help as well. It doesn't always mean it has to be us. It's just being open enough to have the conversation. And when we talked about how we get other people in the room is really important on both sides of the conversation. Is number one, if we're the person that doesn't look like the other people in the room, what things can we do to make sure that we change that? So how can we be fearless? I loved that. And also make sure you're educated before you go into a conversation. And her tip on making sure you educate yourselves on both sides of an argument so that you can come in with some awareness of what another side might look like, so that you can educate as well and be open to what that conversation may be. The other thing is really, she talked about the importance of reading and making sure that you're asking people, what kinds of books or articles can I read that would get me more educated on this issue so that I can make a difference? And biggest one of the day, of the episode, was bring me to the meeting. I loved that. So even if it's not me, it's someone like me that you're bringing to the meeting, that we realized that you want someone in the room that's not like everybody else, and that they can give feedback on how you could set up that meeting to be more inclusive and allow them to educate themselves. Sometimes when someone shadows a meeting, a conversation, that it's more after that meeting that you're giving them time to ask the questions. How did you know to answer things that way? Is this the normal way the conversation goes? How would I need to be prepared if I was going to be in the room, and so forth? But at least they have something to visualize in order to walk away, ask those questions, and then go educate themselves. Another great tip she talked about was having an agenda and making sure that when you're in a room that this agenda is something that has actionable items. I would also include on the agenda that you do, before an agenda is finalized, ask a group, do they have anything that they want to add to that agenda as well, to make sure that you cover what everyone's concerns are together and it's not just a one-sided conversation. And the quote that she said of when opportunity and preparedness come together, you have success, is so important, because a lot of times we may be wanting a role, wanting the next level, but we get in our own way saying that we don't have certain qualifications and so forth. And I think it's really important that we understand who our network is, going back to who's a phone call away, who's a plane ride away, that if you needed them to support you in your success, how could you reach out to people that you need? And then also realizing that everyone deals with imposter syndrome. Whatever situation that they're in, what we see on the outside is not going on the inside for people. So understanding that we're all on a learning journey together and not being afraid to push yourself just that little bit. And maybe it's setting an intention, maybe it's setting a goal for a year from now or 2 years from now, but it's being open enough to allow yourself that place to explore and to learn. So I think most importantly out of this conversation comes back to how I can help. And if that's not a natural conversation for you to have or a natural question, how can you set reminders for yourself of what person, maybe you start out with one a week. Who did you reach out to help? Or maybe it's in a larger sense of how you helped a larger community. Could be an article, it doesn't have to be a conversation. But what are the things that you can do to make your little impact? And if we all do something small, it can multiply into great results so that everyone starts feeling more included, more part of the conversation, and has the opportunity to grow themselves to better the organization, but also better their family, their future, and so on. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.